is here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, my friends. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. While the Islamo-Nazis are killing the other Islamo-Nazis, apparently using chemical warfare in Syria. In Egypt, more of the same, the Muslim Brotherhood attacking Coptic Christians, among others. The Egyptian military trying to put them down. In Iran, that Islamo-Nazi regime, busy hanging gays and torturing, raping, and persecuting others in that country who don't comply with their strict ideas. No, this isn't a democracy movement. There never was a democracy movement in the Middle East other than Israel, and there never will be. Because there's no civil society. There's no tolerance. All the things I've written about and talked about, these are the preconditions to a representative or democratic government. You don't just superimpose one on a society. That just shows you the complete naivete of the Bush administration. And all their scribes out there trashing people like Ted Cruz and Rand Paul. Now, something's going on, many of you are aware of it, that is very troubling to me. I remember the days when there were battles within the Republican Party. In 68, 76, and 80, when Ronald Reagan took on the Republican establishment, it got pretty nasty. Because the establishment doesn't want to give up power, doesn't want to loosen its grip on the Republican Party. And that establishment, the Nixon, Ford, Scranton, Rockefeller, on and on and on establishment, is fully in control of the modern Republican Party. It is a throwback to the minority status of the Republican Party. The Republican Party, which had a minority status for decades, one after the other. And it never learns. And the reason is, it's ossified. It's corrupt. I don't mean financially necessarily, but I mean intellectually and politically. You and me, we're concerned about the survival of this nation. They are considered about their own political survival, so they try to play us and manage us and control us. The minute we sent those Tea Party conservatives to the House of Representatives, over 80 of them, John Boehner immediately moved into action to control as many of them as he could, and he controlled a substantial number of them, and still does. But there are a few who won't be controlled, including some in the Senate, including Ted Cruz, one of the real bright lights of the Republican Party. Not Chris Christie, not the same old, but Cruz. Cruz and Paul and others, but I'm focused on Cruz right now, is exciting the base. He's exciting the Republican Party. He's demonstrated that he can beat the establishment, as he did. And the establishment is very powerful in Texas, and they have an enormous amount of money. And the lieutenant governor, a very wealthy man in his own right, been there for years and years and years with a network and connections. The media supported him. And here's Ted Cruz coming out of nowhere. And he wins. What does he win on? Ideas and principles and goals for the nation. Ted Cruz has been under an unrelentless, vicious, vile, poisonous attack by the establishment, including Bush staffers, including Pete Wehner and and other people like Jennifer Rubin out of Hollywood and Joe Scarborough out of his mind. People who preach moderation and yet don't practice it when it comes to him. And many other conservatives for that matter. I want you to listen to somebody called Nicole Wallace. She's a former McCain campaign aide. She also has her roots in the Bush Klan. And, of course, she shows up on the Morning Joe. This is a program that has as its mission the destruction of conservatism and specific individuals such as Ted Cruz. The fact is it doesn't have an audience, so its mission won't be accomplished. But it sheds some light on how these entrenched Republicans, how they think, and why the country simply will not survive unless we bypass them and defeat them. And I want you to keep something in mind also when I play this relatively short clip. Democratic consultants and former aides and so forth, they never talk about members of their own party the way Republican former aides and speechwriters and consultants speak about conservatives in the Republican Party. Never. Let's listen to Nicole Wallace. She's a nobody. But just listen to how she attacks Cruz. She would never, ever say this about any Democrat. And by the way, there's a pattern with this woman. She's done the same to Sarah Palin. Cut 3, go.
The problem with what Ted Cruz is doing is it's intellectually dishonest. And there's a great piece on a Commentary magazine website this morning written by Pete Weiner, who's a
Stop. So there's a great piece written by Pete Weiner in Commentary. It's not a great piece. It's a hit piece. I'm sorry, that's a fact. There's nothing great about it. There's nothing intelligent or substantive about it. He disagrees with Cruz, but that's not good enough. Let's start over, cut 3. Hat tip media-ite. Here she is again on the Morning Schmo. Go.
The problem with what Ted Cruz is doing is it's intellectually dishonest. And there's a great piece on a Commentary magazine website this morning written by Pete Weiner, who's a very thoughtful conservative who wrote speeches for President Bush and did a lot of conservative...
And he was also Rove's aide, and he's also been involved in conservative circles at times and so forth. He's a very bright guy, and he's also very wrong on this. Okay, go ahead.
In the Bush White House. He was also asked at that event, why don't we impeach President Obama? And he said, because we don't have the votes. The true answer, the intellectually honest answer, is because he has not committed an impeachable offense.
Stop. Oh, yes, really? Really, Nicole Wallace? Really, Nicole Wallace? Do you understand past impeachment efforts? Do you understand the effort to impeach Nixon? Do you know what high crimes and misdemeanors means? Even George Will, unwittingly, of course, laid out the case. When a president conducts himself as Will and Krauthammer and others have said, although they would distance themselves from the I word, when a president has conducted himself in ways that usurp federal law, usurp the Constitution, suspend federal statutes, violate the Constitution, that's precisely what the impeachment clause is all about, Nicole Wallace. And his answer is correct. We don't have the votes. Otherwise, he should be removed. But he won't be removed. And so the nation will suffer as lawlessness becomes institutionalized. Go ahead, Mr. Producer.
So Ted Cruz is doing a whole lot of fear-mongering, and he's lying to the voters. He's presenting an untruthful case because the reason we're going to lose this debate about defending Obamacare is because we don't occupy the White House. We don't have the ability to pass laws and then sign them. So the best way to win this fight is to elect a Republican president.
Oh, okay. You mean like George W. Bush, who expanded Medicare, expanded the federal role in education, who was the greatest spender in American history until Obama came along. Just elect more Republicans, everybody. That'll fix it. More Republicans like Nicole Wallace and Joe Scarborough alike. That'll fix it, folks. Then we'll get rid of Obamacare, you see. Buffoonish. Absolutely buffoonish. Absolutely ineffective, impotent. And no, Ted Cruz isn't lying and he's not fear-mongering. He's telling the truth, as a matter of fact. A leaderless, gutless, rudderless Republican Party that will continue to lose if it keeps this up, if it continues to listen to people like Nicole Wallace. Here she is, former McCain campaign aide. Did not McCain lose his race for the presidency, Mr. Producer? Now she's on TV giving her expert advice. Now, folks, this shouldn't dispirit you. It should infuriate you. And once you're done being angry about it, it should motivate you. We have a political war to win. Oh, yes, even at the federal level, we have a political war to win. And the first war we need to win is against the Nicole Wallace types, the McCain, Bush, Christie, etc., etc. Nixon, Ford, Rockefeller, Scranton wing of the Republican Party. Reagan had to do it, and he did it. We have to do it, too. And I feel we will. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
This Nicole Wallace, along with the detestable Steve Schmidt, another loser, they both are former John McLean staffers who betrayed Sarah Palin, who they trash endlessly. This Nicole Wallace's husband, Mark Wallace, another arrogant operator, was Bush's deputy campaign manager under Ken Mellman in 2004. And so they trash conservatives. That's what they do. I mean, real principled conservatives, while pretending to be that. See, just elect more Republicans. That'll fix it. Folks, this isn't a game. This isn't we have an R on our hat, they have a D on their hat. This isn't a game. I'll give you another example. And it strikes home, and I'm going to address all of these that come up. In my book, The Liberty Amendments, I spend some time concisely explaining why I wrote the book. I spend some time concisely explaining why I was originally skeptical about the state amendment through the convention process, but why I'm now a strict adherent to it. And I lay it out. I also explain that you really can't have a runaway convention. The states choose the delegates, state legislatures do, delegates that they want representing them, and 3/4 of the states have to ratify these amendments just as they would with a Congress. Nobody ever talks about a runaway Congress proposing endless numbers of amendments that somehow 3/4 of the states are going to rubber stamp. And yet this is what we get when we talk about a state convention. Why? Because so many Republicans and, frankly, so many conservatives are very comfortable with what's going on. They really are. In Ricochet, it's a little website. It's not all that widely read, but it's there, and I've got a few friends who write over there. There's a fellow called Peter Meza. I have no idea who he is. So he puts a post up there. I'm just telling you what we're dealing with and what we're up against. Mark Levin's new book, The Liberty Amendments, presents proposed new amendments to the U.S. Constitution that will, in his view, restore the American Republic. I wonder what a set of proposed amendments to the Constitution that liberals would prefer would look like. Now, this is so knee-jerk and anticipated that I can barely wait to respond to it. But first, I got to tell you what he writes. Here's some examples. The first 10 amendments to the Constitution are hereby repealed. Propose FDR's second Bill of Rights as a new set of amendments. Propose a mirror set of anti-liberty amendments to counteract Levin's set, and it goes on. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's look at the first 10 amendments. The First Amendment is hanging by a thread. The Second Amendment has, in fact, been diluted and is under constant assault. The Fourth and Fifth Amendments have been diluted and are under constant assault. The Ninth Amendment is never even referenced because, as far as the federal government is concerned, it doesn't even exist. And the 10th Amendment, you're laughed out of court when you raise it. Every now and then they'll take a peek at it. But the 10th Amendment was really an exclamation mark behind the whole notion of federalism and state sovereignty, which barely exists today. So we don't need an amendment to get rid of the first 10 amendments because the federal government, without an amendment at all, through the actions of Congress and the president and the bureaucracy and the decisions of the courts, have already been doing this. Then he says, propose FDR's second Bill of Rights as a new set of amendments. I've written about that in 2 prior books. The second Bill of Rights is an entire economic socialist plan that is being instituted. National health care, government control of education, and on and on and on. Does the man even know what the second Bill of Rights is? And it goes on. An amendment to restrict campaign speech. Does he know that George Bush, Nicole Wallace's hero, signed the McCain-Feingold bill even though he said it was unconstitutional? And yet we still have some very strict restrictions on political speech in this nation, despite the Citizens United decision. So what am I saying? I'm saying, folks, that the federal government that this guy says he's concerned about, and the Constitution and the amendments that he obviously pretends to be concerned about, are already under assault and are honored in the breach. Now, what of this notion of a takeover of the convention by the left, and suddenly the Constitution is rewritten? I address that in the book time and time and time again, which he has not read, but which I will discuss very briefly as soon as I return.
This is the Octagon of Talk Radio, The Mark Levin Show. Call him now at 877-381-3811.
There are 27, according to Wikipedia, Republican-controlled legislatures as I speak. 27 out of 50. 27 out of 50. The National Republicans can't win the Senate. The National Republicans can only win the House with we, the conservative constitutionalists and Tea Party, supporting them. The National Republicans nominate one loser after another. But in the state legislatures, according to Wikipedia, as of now, the Republicans control 27 of them. 34 are required to call for a convention of the states to propose amendments. They can't amend the Constitution on their own. You need 3/4 of the states for that. So this is a process, and it won't be easy. It's daunting. But when some jerk posts something, look at all these amendments I have, you have to talk about the state convention process first. The reason that a state convention is called. The impetus for it. Why states would seek it. They're not going to send delegates there willy-nilly to throw out the Constitution. And yet, ladies and gentlemen, what's happening at the national level with the federal government? You see, the fact that I bring up the Constitution these people cringe. They embrace the post-constitutional activities of the federal government. I'm talking about the Republicans in Washington. These Republicans, like Peter Meza, they have no agenda. They provide no opposition. And there's no advancement. Some claim to support federalism. Well, the state convention process is quintessential federalism. You bypass the federal government, and the states are operating to amend the federal Constitution, so they're attacking federalism. In fact, they're rejecting self-government. They fear it. They prefer top-down authoritarianism, apparently, because that's what we're getting. That's what we're getting. And it's interesting, at no point in his little post on Ricochet does he talk about the current state of the Constitution. Does he talk about the current state of what Washington is doing? That's the whole impetus for this. Which is why I go to great lengths to explain it in the book for those who will read. This website's supposed to attract intellectuals. Apparently not so in many cases. Knee-jerk, uninformed, didn't read the book. Now, we're not talking about a popular vote or majoritarianism or anything of the sort. Each state legislature or a convention convened by a state legislature, just as with the other amendment process where Congress proposed amendments, gets one vote. One vote. Do you think 12 red states would vote to throw out the Bill of Rights? Do you think 12 red states would vote to adopt FDR's socialist second Bill of Rights, ladies and gentlemen? Do you think 12 red states would vote to eviscerate free speech? Do you think 12 red states, 13 red states would do anything of the sort? Of course not. So this is nothing more than fear-mongering. This is nothing more than defeatism. So what are the problems with this guy's post? Number one, there's no discussion about what actually exists today. The post-constitutional activities of the federal government, and that it's getting more aggressive in the way it conducts itself. I mean, what do we need an example, a modern example bigger than Obamacare? So he would just surrender to it. Or as Nicole Wallace would say, just elect more Republicans. So the Bill of Rights are under attack today. Not by the states, by the federal government. The second Bill of Rights, FDR's socialist program, is being instituted, not by the states collectively on the people, even though some states individually. No, the federal government is. Campaign speech is under attack. McCain-Feingold. McCain was the Republican nominee. George Bush signed that law, even though it was unconstitutional. A Republican nominee for president was involved in proposing it. A Republican president signed it into law. The Supreme Court curtailed it. Just elect more Republicans, ladies and gentlemen. That'll fix it. That'll fix it. Now, I decided to, again, use this guy as a foil because it's a fairly stupid post. But the point is, serious, substantive engagement on this is what I look forward to. And I think it's going to get harder and harder to get. We shall see. But yes, we're going to defend conservatives at the national level who are real conservatives, who are serious about taking on what's taking place, who understand that you need to move the nation, you have to move the argument, and that the perfect storm doesn't always exist. It's not easy, but it's tough. You got to take some chances, particularly when your efforts are to save the nation. It's just that some people don't think we're in dire straits. The prior administration, the prior officials of the administration, why would they? What the hell did they do to fix it? Nothing. Nothing. What the hell are they going to do to fix it? Nothing. They're not going to do anything. It's just amazing. And the great thing about this debate now, quite frankly, the great thing that this book and you, my beloved audience, what we're doing now is we're smoking this out. We're fleshing it out. And that's very, very important. And I want to tell you something that's going to upset these people to no end. And that's good. And I think put a smile on most of your faces, because I have you to thank. The Liberty Amendments, restoring the American Republic. Restoring the American Republic. See, these folks don't think anything needs to be restored because they're ignorant. The Liberty Amendments will debut on the New York Times list, published on September 1st as #1 in the nation of all books, nonfiction, hardcover. #1 in the nation, all books, ebook. #1 in the nation, all books combined, hardcover and ebook. All three nonfiction lists, #1, it will debut. It will be published in the New York Times on September 1st. They will be furious, but so what? And that's thanks to you. You don't have to agree with everything I've written. You don't have to agree with amendments that I'm suggesting. As I said, I don't have unassailable knowledge. These are reforms that I'm arguing for. It may need some adjustment based on our heritage, based on our history, based on what the framers intended, and also based on the experience we're going through right now. There may be other ideas, great. But this is an agenda that is intended to breathe life back into the Constitution and to restore the constitutional republic. And these other Republicans and this guy, Peter Meza at Ricochet, what is it that they suggest? Nothing. Just put up a cheap, childish post. Hey, look at this, guys. Or over at Media Matters, put a list of horribles that are going to occur. Let me tell you something, folks. The list of horribles are occurring. People are losing their jobs over Obamacare. As an example, one example. People are losing their health care over Obamacare. And the Republican Party does nothing. Whoop. Let me put a footnote there. The Republican Party attacks the conservatives within the Republican Party who are trying to do something. Yes, this is a debate we need to have, not only within the Republican Party, but outside the Republican Party, not only among Republicans, but among Americans. If you don't think we're facing perilous times, then none of this will interest you. Go about your business. But if you listen to this show, I know you think differently. And I can see the response to the book. I know you think differently. And if there's a better plan, then let's hear it now, right now, because we don't have time to piddle around. These people who navel gaze, who debate among themselves, who think that just by writing a column or a cheap shot or whatever, that they've accomplished something. They've accomplished nothing. Zero. And they don't get out among the people. You, me, we get to talk to each other every day. They talk to themselves. They conspire among themselves. They're cloistered. There's a reason why Congress has a 12, 13, 14% rating. There's a reason why Obama's ratings are almost at 40%. There's a reason why the Supreme Court's ratings are dropping. There's a reason why people are disgusted with Washington, disgusted with the bureaucracy. There's a reason why there's a disconnect. And it's getting increasingly more dangerous and unhealthy for a society. Writing vicious attacks on Ted Cruz, repeating them on MSNBC, That gets us nowhere. And they need to be responded to from now on. And I tell my fellow conservatives in broadcast media, in written media, on websites and so forth, it's time to point these people out and respond to them. It's time. Because they seek to pick us off one by one. Not while I'm behind this microphone. All right, folks, let's take a little break. 2 Connecticut women answering a job posting met with a man claiming to be hiring for a national company. They paid the man $40 and filled out job applications, giving up their Social Security numbers, addresses, and birth dates. And after several days of not hearing back from the man, they called police. Well, authorities suspect that the personal information may be used for identity theft. Identity thieves are shrewd, and they're targeting your checking and savings accounts, and they're after your cash and your retirement. Identity theft has become such a serious and complex crime, you simply can't fight it alone. I trust LifeLock Ultimate to help protect my identity and my bank accounts and those of my parents from takeover fraud. LifeLock can't protect you or your bank accounts, however, if you're not a member. So please visit lifelock.com/Levin/LEVIN for details and my special 10% discount. Or just call and use promo code Levin to get the special 10% discount. Here's the number. 1-800-457-LOCK, 1-800-457-LOCK, 1-800-457-LOCK. Network does not cover all transactions, and scope may vary.
Mark Levin.
Well, I came out of the bunker. I want to thank Sean Hannity and Neil Cavuto and my buddy Eric Bolling and at the Fox News Channel. Now I'm going back to the bunker. I want to thank you folks who showed up in New York and New Jersey for the book signing. I've got 2 left. One at Tyson's Corner, Virginia, this Saturday at Barnes & Noble. And then the final book signing on September 7th at the Reagan Library. Then I'm done signing, and I'm back in the bunker. Appearing from time to time, but not as much. I say what I have to say behind the microphone. That's what I do. That's my passion. Now, folks, what I'm trying to convey when I read these things is how thin and superficial the opposition is intellectually. They're all about cheap shots or dispiriting or some other agenda, or they're perfectly happy with the state of affairs. They just want to get back in office, or I don't know. Doesn't really matter to me. I've never written comments about a book that I haven't read. I just think it's ridiculous. So when somebody writes comments about a book they haven't read, it's a cheap shot. Now, when somebody has written comments about a book they have read, then that's potentially a worthy discussion. Potentially. The problem most of these critics have is they have no plan. They have no alternative. We have a plan. It's called the Constitution. We have an alternative. It's called the state legislatures. They have nothing. They offer us nothing. Just elect more Republicans. It doesn't matter who they are. It could be Mike Castle of Delaware, Chris Christie of New Jersey. Doesn't matter. Just keep electing Republicans. And you have. And what do you have for it? Well, you've got massive debt, a massive bureaucracy, an out-of-control presidency, an out-of-control Supreme Court, and an out-of-control Congress. Just keep electing Republicans. Well, you have. You elected Nixon. He gave you the EPA and OSHA and affirmative action and 1,000 other things. And he was followed by Gerald Ford, not elected. But he's your quintessential establishment Republican, and this is the sort of guy that they like. You elected George H.W. Bush in the Reagan third term, and what did you get? A massive expansion of the government. He wouldn't even fight. Then you laid down the law, and you elected Gingrich and the Republicans in the House, and you got some things. Almost a balanced budget, workfare and welfare. I mean, some of the things that Clinton did that he takes credit for now, Clinton didn't do it because he wanted to. He did it because conservatives forced it. Then you elected George W. Bush. He lost the popular vote, but he won the Electoral College vote. He is a legitimate president in his first term. And he won the popular vote in the second term. But he's not going to be known for cutting government or trying to cut government. He didn't veto any budgets or spending bills. He didn't even try. They massively expanded the federal government. It was bipartisan. In fact, we controlled the Senate and the House and the presidency for 6 years. As I said yesterday, can you imagine if the Democrats controlled the presidency, the Senate, and the House for 6 years? Do you know how this country would be turned inside out? They controlled it for 2 years and they turned it inside out. We control it for 6 years and we're taking steps backwards every single time. And these are the people telling us that Ted Cruz is dangerous and he's a radical. And these are the people telling us, no, 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 don't look at the Constitution. The world started with the New Deal. Meanwhile, the spending is spiraling out of control every day. It's not even discussed anymore. The size and breadth of the federal bureaucracy and its ubiquitous reach into damn near everything we do. What's their plan for it? There is no plan for it. Well, we have a plan. It's in the Constitution, in the Liberty Amendments, restoring the American Republic. I'll be right back.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, everybody. This is Hour 2. I'm Mark Levin. Our number, 877-381-3811. 877-381-3811. We have a great guest in Hour 3 at the bottom of the hour. A great guest. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as you know, and no thanks to network news, I might add, 3 teenagers murdered a 21-year-old Australian young man who was jogging on the street in a fairly wealthy, safe neighborhood. But the teenagers, reportedly, were bored, although there's some reports that they may have been members, one or more, of a gang. And the Australian 21-year-old ball player, very, very nice person, as best you can see, was here, among other things, visiting his American girlfriend. And he was shot 3 times in the back. That's the latest report. There are reports coming in constantly. And he died. Shot 3 times in the back. For nothing. Nothing. These 3 teenagers are being tried as adults. 2 of them are black, 1 of them is white. The 2 black teenagers are being charged with first-degree capital murder. The white teenager is being charged because he was an accomplice of some sort, but apparently didn't pull the trigger. So, according to reports, none of us were there, 1 or both of the black teenagers shot the white Australian young man, 21, in the back and killed him for no reason whatsoever. Now, some people on the Internet are now digging up some of their social site communications, and there seems to be a suggestion, if not more, of a racial motive. But even putting that aside, Josh Earnest at the White House press briefing today, I guess the other spokes idiot, Jay Carney's on vacation. I'm just a guess. Or maybe he's getting an eyebrow implant, Mr. Producer, because he doesn't have any. But anyway, Josh Earnest, who is not, at the White House press briefing today, the Fox reporter Ed Henry dared to ask about this because, as we know, Barack Obama, he's very, very concerned about racism in this country. Obama is a racialist. Very, very concerned, you know, when the professor at Harvard accused a white cop of all kinds of stuff. In the Trayvon Martin case, he made many statements about them, two prominent statements. At first, he said Trayvon Martin could have been his son, and then the second time, he made it clear that Trayvon Martin could have been him. But not a word from our president about this murder. There wasn't an altercation. The white Australian was not on top of a teenager banging his head against the concrete. He was shot in the back. He never even saw who shot him. He didn't even know what hit him. And he died in his own blood. So I assume that this White House, monitoring the news, you know, that's what they do over there in the press office. They monitor all the news and so forth. I am certain that the President of the United States is very, very concerned about this, given his concern in the Trayvon Martin case. Let's hear what Josh Earnest had to say in response to Fox's Ed Henry. Cut 5, Hat Tip Daily Caller, go.
Do you have any reaction to the Christopher Lane case?
I'm not familiar with it, actually.
In Oklahoma, this 22-year-old Australian baseball player came from Australia, was targeted apparently by 3 African-American young men who, the Australian was out on a jog, and these young men apparently told the police they were bored and they thought it would just be fun to kill him. Yeah. Any reaction to that?
Well, just that this sounds like a pretty tragic case. I wouldn't want to get ahead of the legal process here.
Stop. What are you talking about? You wouldn't want to get ahead of the legal process. You fools always get ahead of the legal process. You don't even believe in the legal process. I believe it's 2 black teenagers and 1 white, unless that white teenager isn't white. But I'm just looking with my own eyes. Go ahead.
That law enforcement officials are involved and are investigating. But any act of violence is something that the president, I think, himself has spoken pretty eloquently about violence in our communities, and he stood at this podium.
When did the president speak about violence in our communities? He spoke about gun control. He said he's Trayvon Martin. What's he talking about? Go ahead.
Ago, where he talked about his concern about the impact that violence is having on, in particular, young people in this country.
All right, that was a great answer. That Henry asks, why hasn't the president spoken out about this? Cut 6, go.
Why hasn't he spoken out on this, in this case? You said there was a judicial proceeding. There was one in the Trayvon Martin case. He spoke out extensively on that one.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not sure that there's some people in this room I don't think who would agree with you that the president spoke out extensively on it. I think that he answered it.
It was in the Rose Garden?
Yeah, he got asked a question about it.
And he didn't have to answer, but he did.
And
then he came out here himself.
At the conclusion.
Stop. What is it with this damn administration and these mealy-mouthed liars? The president spoke extensively about the Trayvon Martin case, especially the second time. It was a planted question by a reporter. They knew the question would come up. The president had his talking points ready. He put himself right into the middle of it, saying he is Trayvon Martin in essence. What is all this mealy-mouthed crap from this phony Josh Earnest? When are we going to hear from the president about these teenagers murdering this Australian, shooting him in the back? When are we going to hear from you, Mr. President? When are we going to hear from you, Mr. President, about the Muslim Brotherhood slaughtering Coptic Christians in Cairo and other parts of Egypt, marching nuns down the middle of the street, putting red marks on churches and burning them down, putting red marks on the doors of businesses and burning them down if they're owned by Christians? When are we going to hear from you, Mr. President? So damn disgusted, it's not even funny. Here's the truth. Most murder in this country is black on black. And this president doesn't have the guts to deal with that. And these communities that have high crime, he doesn't know what to do about it, because he would have to reject his own liberal ideology to address it. And he's not about to do that. To grow the economies in these communities, to bring real education into these communities through the market system, to allow law enforcement to do what law enforcement needs to do in these communities. Obama can't support any of it because he's an ideologue. And so he gives them up, an entire generation. An entire generation. In the Middle East, the fact is, most Muslims are not killed by Jews or Christians. Most Muslims are killed by Muslims. Most Arabs are killed by Arabs. The Coptic Christians aren't bothering anybody. The Jews in Israel aren't bothering anybody. Their mere existence seems to be the problem. What's the president have to say when it comes to Egypt? Neutral. What's he have to say about Syria? He doesn't know what to say. What's he have to say about Israel? Israel should surrender the integrity of its sovereignty and its security to what? Terrorists. That's the Obama foreign policy. And to be truthful about the Bush foreign policy in the Middle East, the democracy project, the Bush foreign policy in the Middle East, with this democracy project, I'm going to be honest with you, is not that different than the Carter foreign policy, which was based solely on human rights. These are doctrines. These are ideologies. The only foreign policy that a president of the United States should be embracing is one that secures American interests and security and that of our allies. Case closed. That's it. Not isolationism, not neoconservatism, not intervention, not democracy projects. America's self-interest. And yes, there are occasions when we Americans are so taken aback by something that's going on in the world that we determine that we will, in fact, shed American blood to intervene, to protect the helpless people from genocide and so forth. But that's not the democracy project. Do you realize how stupid the democracy project was? When you have societies where people are at each other's throats, when there is no civil society, no tolerance whatsoever, and no history of it, oh, let's have a vote. A vote for what? Oh, let's have a vote in the Gaza Strip. And there's Hamas. And they're never going to give up power. And that's what the Muslim Brotherhood is up to. And the reason we want the Muslim Brotherhood defeated is for our self-interest. They have stated repeatedly, their mission statement provides that they are at war with us, the West. And if the Egyptian army is prepared to try and wipe them out, why wouldn't we support them? Well, Mark, we might we might, trigger them attacking us. They do attack us. And their alliance with Nazi Germany and Hitler, same with the Palestinians, by the way. Oh, Obama said, they all need to be at the table. Right. No, they don't. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Okay, let's take some calls, shall we? Yes, we shall. Let's go to Martha Clayton, Georgia, on the Internet. How are you, ma'am?
Hello, Mark. I can't believe I actually got through.
Oh, thank you.
I listen to your show every night. I don't watch television, and I've been listening to you for 3 years. I've called your program before. But I just wanted to let you know, I got your book today, and I started reading it. And by the way, my husband thinks you're a genius, and he's not generous with compliments.
Well, I'm not, but thank him anyway.
But anyway, I started reading your book, and I told your call screener, actually I'm studying your book. I've been making notes in the margins and looking things up. I want to be able to talk to my friends and family about the book, and I don't want to make a mess of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to thank you for writing the book.
Well, you know what? It's my pleasure. I enjoy writing. It's a lot of work. It takes my weekends and my nights, but I enjoy it very much. And I'll tell you what, Martha, if you'll notice, the book is really just over 200 pages long, but then there are notes in the back for people to look up and check sources and expand to the extent they want to. It's going to come under attack, cheap shots. I'm addressing them already, people who won't really take the time to understand this or study this and are, very flip about their comments. We can't allow people like that to push us off course. And you're doing exactly, in my humble opinion, what needs to be done. Trying to understand this, which really is not hard. It's in plain English, but there's a lot to it. And then talk to other people about it. This is important. The ideas have energy. Ideas make a difference.
Well, Mark, I'm under no illusions about what this country is facing. We are in dire circumstances. And I hope to convey that to other people. But I feel with your book and the knowledge that I will have behind me with your book, I feel I can do that.
Well, you're very, very kind. I'll tell you what, I'll send you a signed copy, Martha. Don't hang up, of the Liberty Amendments. Thank you very much. And I will tell you folks now, at Amazon.com, it's less than $16. That's all. Costco, Walmart, Sam's Club, BJ's, Target. Here I go. I'm going to get in trouble. Barnes & Noble has moved them to the front of the store. And, of course, you can get your ebook version. And boing, all of a sudden it shows up on your reader. So really they're everywhere, including independent bookstores. And we're going to have a hell of a good time this Saturday at Tyson's Corner Mall in Virginia, Vienna, Virginia, at Barnes & Noble, where I hope thousands and thousands of you will show up. It's the next to last signing. Then the final one will be at the Reagan Library on September 7th. And I should mention, those of you who can't attend these events, and it's most of you, you can purchase a signed copy from Premier Collectibles. I'll be talking more about that next week, but Premier Collectibles, if you're thinking way ahead to birthdays and Christmas and other holidays, I think we're about 40% sold out, and I haven't even been talking about it. So once I start talking about it more extensively next week, they will sell out. And I do that not because I want to sit around for 3 or 4 days, 3-4 months ago, and sign them, but to make them available to you, those of you who can't attend these very few book signings that I do. Anyway, it's the ideas in the book brought to us by our framers, discussed in modern times today, that I think will be very, very powerful for many of you and cause many of you to rethink things. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin, the most popular conservative author in America. Call in to the Mark Levin Show now at 877-381-3811.
Mark Levin, author of numerous New York Times best-selling books, Men in Black, Liberty and Tyranny, and Ameritopia. Now comes the Liberty Amendments.
This book is what we do, what I do behind this microphone, what we discuss day in and day out. And it answers the question that you ask. Mark, what can we do? Well, this is my answer.
The Liberty Amendments, new from Mark Levin.
When you read this book, The Liberty Amendments, Restoring the American Republic, it gives you hope. It gives you some inspiration, and we need it. And that's why I wrote it.
Rush Limbaugh on Mark Levin's The Liberty Amendments.
It's a wonderful book. He proposes 10 amendments that simply reaffirm the original intent of the Constitution and then gives a thorough explanation for why each amendment is in fact justified and traces it back to the days of the founding.
This year's must-read, Mark Levin's The Liberty Amendments, now on sale everywhere.
Now, folks, as you know, the statists, they're never done. They're never done. They keep moving society in the wrong direction. And with the Constitution really being eviscerated, there's very little to stop them. With the Republican Party being impotent, there's very little to stop them. So Obama is now turning his sights on colleges and universities. There's a great piece at cnsnews.com written by my buddy Terry Jeffrey. You may not know about this, but Obama's about to go out and speak about it the next 2 days. White House Deputy Press Secretary, this spokes idiot, Josh Earnest, said at the White House briefing, President Obama believes America needs, quote, to fundamentally rethink and reshape. See the fundamentally stuff? Its higher education system. The entire higher education system. And that he'll be going on a bus tour on Thursday and Friday to make some proposals, Earnest said, quote, are not going to be popular with everybody, unquote. After noting that average college let's stop right there. Where in the federal Constitution does the president have the power to fundamentally change colleges and universities? Can somebody please tell me? And when I say the effort to use the Commerce Clause endlessly, that is, any institution that receives $1 in federal monies, all of a sudden the federal government has an ownership interest in it, that needs to change. Oh, what are you against child labor laws? And so now the President of the United States feels he has the authority to somehow change our universities and colleges. Now, we make this statement all the time, fill in the blank. Imagine if Republicans were going to change colleges and universities, and Republicans would have a reason to, because they're Marxist-filled, hate-indoctrinating entities. But that aside, there's no constitutional authority for any president to fundamentally, quote, reshape, unquote, higher education. It's not part of the federal government. After noting that average college tuition costs have risen dramatically in recent decades, Earnest said, so what the president believes that we need to do is we need to fundamentally rethink and reshape the college, the higher education system, and we need to find a way to build on innovation. So the president on his bus tour will lay out some fundamental reforms that would bring real change to the way that we pay for college education in this country. Let me guess, more freebies. More freebies for the quote-unquote middle class. You see, that way the middle class will be paying for its own demise because the federal government will go in deeper and deeper debt. Taxes will go up. But don't worry, you'll have a free education. We'll see. This Earnest, He went on, quote, now, the proposals the president's going to lay out are not going to be popular with everybody, but they're going to be in the best interests of the middle class, because Obama knows all about the middle class, because he was in Martha's Vineyard, and there the key people carrying his bags, they were in the middle class. And the president's looking forward to having that discussion over the course of Thursday and Friday, in addition to riding a bus. Discussion with whom? Himself? Yeah, his discussions consist of him looking in the mirror and talking to himself. Now get this. In 2010, when Congress passed Obamacare, I told you this law is the Trojan horse of all Trojan horses. Language buried in the Health Care and Education Reconciliation Act, one of the two bills comprising the health care reform plan, terminated the federal government's program that guaranteed student loans made by private lenders, leaving just the federal direct student loan program, in other words, nationalizing the student loan program. So under this program, the federal government essentially serves as the banker. It provides the loans to students and their families using federal capital, that is, your tax money or money borrowed on your behalf. And it owns the loans. At the end of March 2010, and this is when Obamacare was passed, the month Obama signed Obamacare and gave the Treasury a monopoly over federally guaranteed student loans, the outstanding balance on federal direct student loans was $168.5 billion. At the end of July 2013, the outstanding balance was $618 billion. So now, because they own the student loan program, and because of the Commerce Clause, they now are going to claim, not directly, but in order to act and fundamentally alter higher education, that the federal government owns higher education. So what would that fella at Ricochet that we talked about in the first hour, what would he do about this? Nothing. Maybe he'd write one of his buddies, hey, guess what Obama's doing? Oh, what? Oh, look, he's doing this. I know how to fix it. Let's elect more Republicans. That's basically the state of opposition in this country today. So Obama wants to fundamentally rethink and reshape higher education. You see, folks, he's an imperial president. We are unmoored from the Constitution. He knows and believes that he can use the executive branch to these departments and agencies that have been conferred unconstitutionally law-making power independent of Congress to impose his will. But don't worry, Nicole Wallace, she was on the Morning Schmo show on MSLSD and she said, hey, look, hey, this Cruz is a liar. Obama can't be impeached, not just because they aren't the numbers. What's he done? He hasn't violated the Constitution. Meanwhile, that twit probably has never read the Constitution. At least not ours. So what are we going to do about this, Bushies? What are we going to do about this over at Ricochet? Such a harsh-sounding website, too. Nothing. We're not going to do anything. On we go. Right? Certainly seems like that. But CNS News, Terry Jeffrey, they figured this out. And we'll be listening tomorrow and the next day to see what our great president, he's going to propose next, and I assure you it's going to involve a central role for the central government, as it takes care of the middle class, as it's done such a great job with health care and employment and wealth creation. Then I wrote another book called Ameritopia. And I explained this whole utopian mindset. And I explained why people surrender to it or are conquered by it at great length. And I explained what the tools are of the demagogues who lead this, in effect, religious movement. How they conquer people, how they force them to surrender, how they punish successful people. I don't know why there's any confusion about it. It's all laid out in the book. And it's all laid out through philosophers throughout our history. The history of man. Plato's Republic, Thomas More's Utopia, Thomas Hobbes' Leviathan, Marx's Workers' Paradise. It's all there. One form or another. That's what Obama supports. Do you understand under the Obama plan they even have different plans? The platinum plan, the gold plan, the silver plan, and the bronze plan? Do you know if you read the Republic, Plato's Republic, he talks about this mythical ideal society where people in essence are assigned responsibilities and he assigns them different metallurgical characteristics, much like Obamacare. Oh, yes. There's people who are assigned to gold and silver and so forth. You think they just came up with that when they wrote Obamacare? No. They dug it right out of the Republic, which is a fascist, if you will, among other things, society. Obama didn't invent any of this stuff. He's just instituting it, which is my point. 2 years with a Democrat Congress, where he had absolute control, enormous damage to a free society. And now, where he doesn't have that kind of control, he's exercising presidential powers that don't even exist. And Nicole Wallace goes on MSNBC and attacks Ted Cruz. And Pete Wehner uses the really tiny little website with minimal import to attack Ted Cruz. Because, you see, Ted Cruz is the danger. Ted Cruz is the problem. Jennifer Rubin over there, barely literate, the Washington Compost. Who does she attack? Ted Cruz. Yeah, Ted Cruz is the danger. That's right. Right. Well, the danger actually is them. Because they've been sucked into this. And they're part of the problem now. By the way, I have a really great piece in front of me that I want to get to after the break by John Hawkins. I think it's going to really, not necessarily surprise you, but I think it's definitely going to get your attention. He has reminded us of some reporting he did earlier about John Boehner and Eric Cantor and others on this Obamacare matter. And I want to make sure I provide this to you because it's really, you may not be surprised by it, but I didn't remember it, and I'm kind of stunned by it. Hillsdale College. You all know by now I'm a huge fan of Hillsdale College. And one of my dearest friends and mentors is Dr. Larry Arnn, the president of Hillsdale College. It's under his leadership that Hillsdale is one of the most important and best colleges in the nation. Hillsdale College is a very difficult school to get into. And they're always flooded with applications from the best and brightest high school students from across the nation who want to receive a life-changing education. Look, this is our chance. If you know a stellar, honorable, proud American high school student, top-of-the-line student, you owe it to him or her to tell them about Hillsdale College. Go to levinforhillsdale.com right now. That's Levin for Hillsdale.com. And order a free information and admissions packet. And you can also give our website to the student in order for them to get the packet and learn more about what it means to pursue truth and defend liberty. That's levinforhillsdale.com. The prayer placed inside the 1853 cornerstone of Central Hall on the campus of Hillsdale reflects Hillsdale's continuing commitment. It says, "May earth be better and heaven be richer because of the life and labor of Hillsdale College." That sums it up beautifully. So please go to levinforhillsdale.com.
Mark Levin.
Dawn in Justin, Texas, the great WBAP. Go.
Hey, Mark. Thank you, sir, for taking my call.
Thank you.
I wanted to tell you that as a former Navy veteran, was a Navy veteran and a nurse, I'm really scared for what's going to happen with Obamacare. They've told me my whole life as a nurse that I'd have job security, and you know what? With Obamacare, nobody knows. And I wanted to just thank you every day for educating me and my family as to, because we're only as good as the education that we absorb and the history that we learn from. And I just wanted to thank you for everything you do every day.
You're very kind, and thank you for your service. Let me ask you something, Dawn. Did you ever think you'd live in a country where the government would dictate what kind of health care you can or cannot have?
No, never.
Did you ever think you'd live in a country where the government would require you and your health care information to be provided on a massive database, which the IRS can use?
No, and it really scares me because I recently applied for health care, and they knew information that I'd never even told anyone, and they knew that when I applied for health care. That's scary.
Did you ever think you'd live in a country where the Republican Party would agree with all this data collection?
No, I'm very disappointed in them, extremely.
I mean, this is really serious stuff as far as I'm concerned, and, oh, well, we got to fight terrorism. This really has nothing to do with terrorism. Zero. So.
No, not at all. Not at all. And I'm really grateful that I got out of the Navy before I had to call that man my commander-in-chief. Let me tell you.
All right, my friend, you take care. Let's go to Sue, Grand Rapids, Michigan, the great WKZO. Go.
Hi, Mark. I just wanted to say I'm a health insurance agent, and
I thought they rounded all of you people up by now.
Not yet. It's January 1st. I don't think anybody, I agree with you completely on the way to go in defunding this crap, but I think another method is to let people actually see what Obamacare actually entails. Nobody realizes the oncoming.
I know, but you know what, Sue? I'm not one of these people who say we ought to have widespread suffering and carnage, and people's parents and children and they themselves are going to be so miserably affected by this just to show them. The fact of the matter is we won't be able to undo this thing, and we have to fight it at every step.
I totally agree with that. I just think if people actually realize what's going to happen with their coverage, there's not going to be single two-person family coverage anymore. You are going to pay per member. So you're going to have a single, you're going to have a two-person, a three-person, a four-person.
Well, not even that. You see, companies are dropping spouses now.
Definitely. They're going to. And then there's no reason to have a 25-year-old on your plan because they're not going to be covered under your family plan. You're going to pay for them individually. You're going to have a whole bunch of liberals who are going, wait a minute, I thought I could have my college kid on. It's no longer a family plan. That person's going to be paying the same, whether they're on your family plan or they're off your family plan. There's no more family plan rating.
All right, I got it. All right, Sue, thank you. No more family plan. But there's reports today, companies are saying, okay, we're dropping spouses of our employees. We choose not to cover them anymore because of Obamacare, because of the cost. So Obamacare has all the wrong incentives, dividing families, eliminating existing coverage, putting people out of work, reducing full-time jobs to temporary part-time jobs. It is a cancer in our system, and that's just the health care part. And then on the constitutional part, it has given the government such enormous power, which the federal government will exercise in ways we can't even imagine yet. A complete disaster. The Republicans are arguing, no. We can't defund this or part of it. We can't fight that. Very sad. Just elect more Republicans. I'll be right back.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, everybody. It's hour 3. We have a special guest at the bottom of the hour. This is the Power Hour. I'm Mark Levin. Our number, 877-381-3811. 877-381-3811. By the way, Mr. Call Screener, I know we're well into the week here, but did you see our friend Chael Sonnen in that fight on Saturday? He whipped Shogun it was fast.
Yeah?
He charged him, took him to the ground, and pounded him, and that was pretty much it.
Nice.
I mean, it was beautiful. So we salute our buddy, Mr. Sonnen, out there, and I wrote him an email that said spectacular. And he wrote back one that said, thank you, exclamation mark. So there you go. All right, I mentioned last hour, I didn't forget, that our friend John Hawkins had a fairly remarkable piece at Right Wing News involving, among others, Boehner and Cantor and somebody named Catherine McMorris Rogers. She's the Republican conference chairman, holding the number 4 slot in the Republican Party. She's a Boehner sycophant. And he says almost immediately after Obamacare passed, I started pushing the idea of cutting off the funds for it in the House. He said it got a little traction at the time, and I went so far as to ask all 4 of the GOP's top leaders in the House if they'd support cutting off funds for Obamacare. One of them was Mike Pence, but since he's governor of Indiana now, that's really not relevant. Here's what they had to say back in July of 2010. John Boehner, this is a quote. We're going to fight to repeal this government takeover of health care and start over with solutions that focus first on lowering costs. Cutting off funding for Obamacare is absolutely something I support. For example, I would support moving as soon as possible to deny any funding for the estimated 16,500 IRS employees that will be needed to implement Obamacare. House Republicans will continue to stand with the American people against this unconstitutional government takeover of health care. That's John Boehner, July 2010. He said that he absolutely supported it. As I read these, I want you to think of the vitriol thrown at Ted Cruz and the others by Pete Wehner and Nicole Wallace and a host of other ex-Bushies and McCainiacs and so forth. John Boehner said this. Then there's Eric Cantor about defunding Obamacare. Yes, without question, Republicans will use every tool available to us to repeal the harmful law. Even in the minority, House Republicans have forced votes to immediately repeal some of the most egregious provisions of the law, including a vote to repeal the individual mandate. But again, when asked about defunding, he said yes, without question. Catherine McMorris Rogers, her initial response, she's the number 4 Republican. Most of you have never heard of her. I believe she's from the state of Washington. She said, if we're successful in repealing Obamacare, and I'm going to work my heart out to repeal it, that would automatically, by definition, cut off the increased out-of-control spending in the Obama-Pelosi health care bill. As House Republicans constantly told Obama and Pelosi, we need to start over. And once we're back at square one, the way things were before Obamacare, we can begin a better process focused on smaller reforms that can gain bipartisan support. Medical liability reform, enabling small businesses to pool together to purchase health care, allowing insurance to be purchased across state lines, etc. Now, John Hawkins writes, at the time I noted Rogers punted on the question, but when I ran into her at the 2010 Smart Girl Summit in September of 2010, she personally told me that despite her somewhat ambiguous answer, she was very much in favor of defunding Obamacare. So I would ask the ex-Bushy and McCain sycophants and the others, I would ask them this. Is John Boehner irresponsible? Is he a liar? Was he lying to the base then, or is he lying to the base now? How about Eric Cantor? How about Kathy McMorris Rogers? Because it would appear that their positions some 3 years ago were not unlike Rand Paul's and Mike Lee's and Ted Cruz's. I thought you'd want to know, ladies and gentlemen. Those men and a handful of others stood on principle from day one and continue to stand on principle. And it's not just a matter of principle. These are practical efforts that can be made, politically smart efforts to inform the American people, to involve the American people so they know who's doing what to whom. John Boehner used to support it. Eric Cantor used to support it. Kathy McMorris Rodgers used to support it. 3 of the 4 Republican leaders in the House. And today they don't. Today they have a different course, which is no course at all. I thought you'd want to know about that. Because to me, this hypocrisy is really hard to tolerate. I want to show you also the nature of these Republican consultants and operatives. They're really up for sale. Here's a little piece, a little example in the Washington Examiner. Longtime Virginia Republican strategist backs Terry McAuliffe. Now, Terry McAuliffe is this loathsome Bill Clinton butt kisser who's become super wealthy through some of the sleaziest deals. He's actually leading in a recent poll against Ken Cuccinelli, the great Attorney General of Virginia, by 6 points for governor. See, in part what's happened is that the locusts are moving into Virginia. Mark, what do you mean? Well, I've talked about this before. The liberal locusts, they destroy their own communities, raising taxes, regulations, business unfriendly, and then they've made their own community so miserable they move to red states or red counties or red towns, like Northern Virginia, out of Maryland and D.C. and other places. And then they turn these red states into purple states into blue states. And that's what's happening to Virginia. How else can a lightweight, a sleazy crony like Terry McAuliffe be leading anybody for anything? But that's not even the point. Virginia Democratic gubernatorial candidate Terry McAuliffe will receive an endorsement from whom? Boyd Marcus. What the hell is a Boyd Marcus? A longtime Republican strategist in Virginia who has successfully guided GOP candidates in the Old Dominion for decades is throwing his weight behind Democrat Terry McAuliffe in the state's high-profile governor race. Boyd Marcus, last seen advising Lieutenant Governor Bill Bolling. Now, this loser, this nobody Bill Bolling, who most people don't know anything about, he's one of these big tent Republicans, you know. Ford, Rockefeller, Scranton, Bush, one of those Republicans. Big tent, except the base isn't welcome. The base isn't welcome. Conservatives aren't welcome, unless, of course, we vote for them. So this Boyd Marcus used to advise this pathetic Lieutenant Governor Bill Bolling. And you see, Bill Bolling wanted to run for governor, but he was beaten by Ken Cuccinelli. Or he decided not to because of Ken Cuccinelli. In other words, because his own party wouldn't support him. And that's intolerable. Because everybody knows what Virginia needs right now is Bill Bolling. Who the hell is he? I don't know. But we must have the man. And his sidekick, Boyd Marcus. What's a Boyd Marcus? Well, he's a longtime advisor to somebody. So Boyd Marcus is quoted, quote, "I'm enthusiastically supporting Terry McAuliffe for governor because I believe he will work with both parties to advance an agenda, blah, blah, blah. More claptrap from another loser." These Republican consultants and speechwriters, the Boyd Marcuses of the world, you know what they are? They're hemorrhoids. That's exactly right. They're hemorrhoids on the butt of American politics. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
I want to continue with Obamacare briefly here. Forbes magazine, Scott Gottlieb has a truly important piece there. This law, I mean, this is just unbelievable. And he points out how Obamacare will harm cancer patients. Obamacare is going to degrade medicine, but its ill effects will fall disproportionately on patients with serious conditions, especially those diagnosed with cancer. I hope you'll listen up. The legislation contains provisions that directly target patients with cancer because their care is perceived as costly. And these policies couldn't be more badly timed. We're at a turning point in battling cancer. Doctors are finally able to reliably tailor treatments to the unique genetic composition of each patient's tumor rather than by its location in the body alone. Other new drugs are able to prime out our own immune cells to attack cancers. But Obamacare puts access to this progress at risk. First, Obamacare is going to block the ability of patients to seek out the specialist doctors who are most likely to prescribe these cutting-edge treatments. Obamacare coaxes health plans to reduce spending and health care utilization by limiting the choices patients will have of doctors. This is the primary way that health plans are being cheapened enough to meet Obamacare's strict guidelines on the low value of the coverage that the plans can offer. Folks, this is serious. Furthermore, insurers are barred from using the other tools that they've traditionally employed to keep the costs of policies in check, such as cost sharing, underwriting risks, adjusting premiums and benefits. The only thing that health plans are permitted to do under Obamacare is narrow the networks of providers that they contract with, so you have less and less doctors to choose from. So that's precisely what they're doing. By contracting with fewer providers, insurers can cheapen their coverage by clamping down on what doctors prescribe. This will hit cancer patients especially hard. If consumers go outside the narrow network of doctors that their plans offer, patients will be saddled with heavy coinsurance that can make these options absurdly expensive. While Obamacare caps a person's total out-of-pocket costs, the price of getting care outside your restricted provider network isn't subject to these limits, except for care delivered in an emergency room. Now, if patients see doctors outside their narrow networks, they'll have to pay out of pocket for the care. So you can't even get this insurance. They could be stuck with the entire bill. There are no limits under the law, with the only exception being out-of-network medical care delivered in an emergency room. But cancer patients often need the help of specialized doctors and cancer institutions that won't make it into many of these cheapened networks. The latest cancer drugs, as well as new off-label uses for existing medicines, will also be harder to get. Patients may not be able to see the expert doctors most likely to offer these options. New drugs are also slow to make it onto the treatment pathways that Obamacare plans are using a way to narrow the menu of drugs they cover. See, you're not treated as a human being, as an individual with a unique issue or unique illness or problem. You're in the computer. You're in the system. Next, Obamacare tries to coerce doctors to cut down on their use of costlier drugs and tests by changing the way they're paid. The law uses bundled payments, where doctors get lump sums of money to care for patients with particular medical problems. Now, the idea is to pit the cost of treatments doctors prescribe directly against their earnings and give doctors a potent incentive to use cheaper remedies. But these schemes will slow adoption of new technologies. This summer, Medicare announced $1 billion in healthcare innovation awards to get help in designing these bundled payments for paying doctors to treat different kinds of cancer. Those who bemoan the fact that payment schemes like Medicare's reimbursement formula for injectable drugs give doctors incentive to prescribe more expensive treatments must realize these same economic principles also work in the opposite direction. Paying doctors more to do less will also have consequences on patient care. Incentives to do less can be as bad as an inducement to do more. Finally, Obamacare targets cancer drugs directly by expanding a program called 340B, which siphons money away from drug developers in order to subsidize hospitals. The Obama administration sees the program as a way to prop up the hospitals, a favorite constituency of his, on the dime of less popular drug makers. But the oblique way the money is extracted from drug companies spawns a lot of harmful consequences that are increasing the cost of cancer care and lowering its quality. And it goes on, and we will link to this story. Oh, there's so much to say about this in so little time. Remember the article I read yesterday on Media Matters about the Commerce Clause and all the great things the government does with the FDA and so forth and so on? And what would Mark propose here? Well, ladies and gentlemen, this demonstrates the destructive nature of government intervention in such things as health care. The radical statists would have you to believe it's all good. It's all positive. That we need this intervention all the time. I just read you a column about how Obamacare is going to put cancer patients at greater risk at a time when they need all the help they can get. They're not going to have access to the specialists they need, to the expensive drugs they need, unless they can pay out of pocket some absurd amount because they weren't permitted to purchase the insurance that they might need in such circumstances. Is that the government helping human beings? Is that the government looking out for the middle class? Is that a compassionate government? No, ladies and gentlemen. No, and the government does an awful lot of this. Where's the Food and Drug Administration? It's nowhere. It'll be part of the cost-cutting bureaucracy that the administration will use in its implementation of Obamacare. So when some guy writes, well, we wouldn't have an FDA, or we wouldn't have a this, or we wouldn't have a that, what about circumstances like this? That's the problem. They want the government to do everything and make all these decisions, and you and I don't. I'll be right back with our guest.
This is the Mark Levin Show, where American patriots meet every day. The Mark Levin Show is on at 877-381-3811.
Well, it's been quite a while since we've had Senator Jim DeMint on the program, since before he became the head of the Heritage Foundation. Senator, how are you, sir?
Mark, I'm doing great. Even better now that I've been on the road a few days and thousands of people have come out to stand with us on defunding Obamacare. And I just had a lot of people tell me to say hello to the great one when I told them I had to leave to be on your show. So folks here certainly know what you're up to.
Well, thank you. And now, Senator, I'm very, very concerned about not only the lack of support that some of our great conservatives in Congress are not receiving from the Republican leadership, but they're affirmatively being attacked by the Republican echo chamber on TV and other places because they dare to stand up to this.
Yeah. Well, a lot of the people who helped run the 2012 election for the Republicans are telling them don't do anything or we'll risk not winning the majority in 2014. But they're not going to win the majority if they don't inspire people like Ted Cruz and Mike Lee have by just standing up for what they promised to do. And everywhere around the country, again, we had 2,000 people in Dallas yesterday, and all they want is for Republicans to keep the promise they made when they were given the majority in 2010. And every Republican ran on the promise of doing everything they could to stop Obamacare. So the courage, I'm afraid, is going to have to come from the people, and we're trying to get people engaged all over the country to help us stop this thing.
You know, I don't really understand the Republican timidity. It's become a mindset. It's become a habit. It's become a pattern. They point to 1995-96. The government was shut down for 3 weeks. We won 2 Senate seats as a result of that. We lost 9 House seats, which we were likely to lose anyway. Still retained a strong majority. We also were able to change welfare to include work fear, get closer to a balanced budget, which Clinton runs around and takes credit for. much positive came out of that. I'm not saying that they're saying we should shut down the government, but worst case scenario, if Obama does it, there's plenty of time to recover from this if the Republicans know how to speak.
You're right. That's the point. Can they speak? I mean, there's never been a better time to win the argument. Obama's popularity is failing. Over half of Americans want us to stop this bill. And if the Republicans actually stand up and pass a bill that funds the government but eliminates funding for Obamacare, we can win that argument with the American people, because if the government shuts down, it's going to be because the president decides to shut it down.
And because the president endorses Obamacare. There's already a massive list of horribles coming out of this law before it's fully implemented. I don't even hear them day after day, moment after moment, pressing the case.
No, they're not. And they'll vote to repeal it in the House because basically, Mark, that doesn't really involve any courage. It's not going to go anywhere. But the Constitution gives the House the power of the purse. And regularly, almost every year, there are amendments to spending bills that say no fund shall be allowed for this or that. And so they can do that, and they've done it with law. I mean, things that are law. The president says this is law, we've got to implement it. I passed a law 5 years ago that said we had to build 700 miles of double-layer fencing along the border, but the Congress didn't fund it, and the president ignored it. So we have the power to do this if the Republicans decide to do it. And I'm increasingly optimistic. A few weeks ago, people were saying we were stupid to talk about defunding it. Now people are saying, well, maybe we just delay part of it or defund part of it. I think we can win this thing if, like you said, if Republicans can just get a voice and go out and talk to the American people. Americans aren't stupid. They can see what's going on here.
And they're feeling it. And that's the thing. The American people will back the Republicans. By the way, you have an organization, Heritage Action, correct?
Well, I'm president of Heritage Foundation. Our sister group is Heritage Action, and they're the ones that are leading this town hall effort that I'm really a guest of. But they're the muscle behind the policies and research that we do. They're putting their grassroots groups over the country to get people plugged in to Congress and to keep Congress more accountable.
I just wanted to say it's a fantastic group. It really is. You all ought to be proud of it. They're out there fighting, pushing the agenda, and I'm very, very impressed with this group. Well, Senator DeMint, how do you like it over there at the Heritage Foundation?
I love it, working with people who love freedom and are willing to stand up for it. And we've got, of course, we do a whole lot of research and policy work. That's what we do at Heritage. But more and more we're developing communication ideas of how to connect this good policy, these good ideas with the American people. And that's been a fun project for me because we've got the best ideas, and it's just a real shame that the people who are voting against us are the ones who could benefit the most from the free market ideas, the individual liberty ideas. So I love what I'm doing. I'm glad to be out of the quagmire in the Senate. But those who are in the Senate and the House who are taking stands like Ted Cruz and Mike Lee, we need to make sure we give them all the backup we can.
But, Senator DeMint, do you agree that at least right now the Republican Party is in the hands of sort of the Gerald Ford, Richard Nixon wing and not the Ronald Reagan wing of the Republican Party?
At the national level, Mark, but we've got a different Republican Party out across America. Local Republicans around, they've got a fighting spirit. They're conservative. A lot of states now have some real champions, like a Nikki Haley or a Scott Walker, and so it's just at the national level. And a lot of those who went through the government closing back in 1995 seem to be permanently scarred. But I just think we need some folks there who have the courage of their convictions, and I'm convinced Americans will stand with us or stand with them if they just stand up for their principles.
All right, Senator DeMint, it is a pleasure, and honestly, in some ways I wish we were back in the Senate, but I know you're heading a magnificent institution as well. God bless you, my friend.
Thank you, Mark. Love your new book. About halfway through. I appreciate you sending me a copy, and the ideas I'd like to get back on and talk about those sometime, too.
I'd love to do it. Thank you, sir. God bless you. You take care. Well, I wonder why my mother and father are calling me now. They know I'm on the air, don't they? I guess so. I'll have to call them after the program. Senator Domini's a really, really good man, and be interesting to see his take on my book. I wasn't planning on him bringing it up, but we will bring him back to have a discussion about that. And that's the whole point of the book, to start thinking about what we can actually do to save the Republic, actually to restore the Republic. He's a good man, always has been. Let me go to Becky, Alexandria, Louisiana, the great KSYL. How are you?
Thank you, Mark. I'm doing pretty well now. A few years ago, an old Vietnam vet retired from down on the bayou, nicknamed you Mr. Radio Free America, and we spent our time teaching and giving out constitutions and giving out Mark's books, and today I had to do it in memorial of my veteran, and I was proud to give that book, and I hope others will do it. But, Mark, I'm so disgusted.
All right, now hold on, Becky, 1 second. So your husband has passed?
He was a Vietnam vet and retired veteran, and he passed away. And during his illness, cancer and heart disease, he was teaching the Constitution. He was asked to speak. And when he could not, they would come to our home and they would film classes that he would give. And, Mark, these Tories that we have in the Republican Party break my heart when they stand before their God and the citizens and say they will protect the Constitution, and then they say, but we have no power.
Mm-hmm.
I thank you, Mark, for your message. Every night as we sat here, we watched the horses run free, and it made us listen to Mark, and the message was so inspiring. And I thank you, Mark.
Well, you know, your husband sounds like he was a wonderful human being and patriot, as do you.
Thank you,
and
Mark.
I'm very, very sorry. I'd like to send you a signed copy of my book. I know how silly that sounds, but, Becky, don't hang up.
I'd be so honored.
Well, it'd be my honor, so please don't hang up. And God bless you and your family, and thank you. Let us go to, let's see, Ronnie, Melbourne, Florida, the great WMMB. How are you?
Hey, Mark, how's it going tonight?
Okay.
All right. The career politicians that we have on both sides of the aisle are destroying our government and destroying our country in general. There's a very select few that we have in Washington today that actually have a backbone and stand up, and they aren't even scared to be sent home. Just to paraphrase something that Senator Rand Paul said a couple weeks ago on Fox News, he was being interviewed, I think, by, well, it doesn't matter who he's being interviewed by. He even said that this job that these individuals have is the best job that they've had in their lives. And they don't want to lose their job, so they're going to do whatever they can to try to save themselves. And they have no backbone. These individuals like John Boehner, Mitch McConnell, all these guys, they don't want to stand up and fight for what the American people want and what the American Constitution and the American public is all about. The things that they're doing to completely violate their oaths of office is a complete disgrace. And we need to be able to do the things that you're saying in your book that you have coming out. The states need to stand up, and we need to hold a state convention to get things going and back on the right path again.
All right, Ronnie. God bless you, my friend. Thank you. You know, the past few weeks I've been telling you about my friends at the Tea Party Patriots and their August recess toolkit. Now's the time to take action. Your representatives are back home from Washington. They're holding town halls, and, folks, you need to show up. Go to TeaPartyToolkit.com right now to find out where these town hall meetings are happening across the nation. Download the toolkit, show up at these town halls, and tell the professional ruling class you've had enough. There's so many important issues like amnesty, out-of-control spending, what is our last chance to stop Obamacare. In fact, the president has exempted big business from Obamacare. The labor unions don't want it. And now Congress is getting special treatment that protects them from the law. You know what? In other societies, people would be marching on the damn place. Now, if Obamacare isn't good enough for big business, big labor, big government, then it's not good enough for us, we the people. So go to TeaPartyToolkit.com. This stuff just infuriates me. Go to TeaPartyToolkit.com right now to get involved, folks. That's TeaPartyToolkit.com.
Mark Levin.
Let us go to Gail, Tulsa, Oklahoma, the great KFAQ. Go.
Hi, Mark. Thank you so much for taking my call.
Thank you.
I wanted to tell you, you have inspired me. I am doing the Hillsdale College Constitution classes. I've learned so much from you and taking those classes that it prompted me to go to a town hall meeting tonight for the first time. Dr. Coburn, Senator Tom Coburn, was there at Muskogee.
Yeah.
And he did speak up and say that he has read your book, Liberty Amendment.
Really?
And that it is the only solution that he has seen come forward to the problem we have with this tyrannical government. And
wait a minute. He thought it was, in fact, a solution.
Yes, sir, he did. You're the only one, he said, that has come up with a solution. And I agree with him 100%. I'm getting the book on my Kindle where I do
Well, I want to thank him for that. I'm sorry,
Oh,
ma'am.
yes,
Yep.
sir. I was going to mail it to him, Mark. If he hadn't read it, I was going to buy it and mail it to him.
Well, they fly in airplanes a lot. It's in every airport.
Yeah, true. He did come home for vacation. We were glad to have him home. You know, I have a great deal of respect for him. I always have. But, and I'm kind of disappointed in some of the decisions he's made, like not defunding Obamacare.
Right.
He explained that tonight in a way about that we wouldn't be able to fund the whole thing, just a very small part of it.
Right.
And I don't agree with that. I think that at every turn we should have been trying to get rid of it. Every single chance we got, whether we failed at it or not, we should have tried.
But you know what? I have to give him credit. He's actually holding town hall meetings. A lot of these people are hiding in the closet.
Yes, sir. I wish he would have gone to Tulsa, a larger venue, Oklahoma City. That it was quaint, maybe 100 people there. And so, therefore, I did get to ask him something. You know, that made it very nice. And maybe that's why he's doing it that way. In a larger venue, I probably wouldn't have gotten to ask him anything.
And he's not running for re-election. So even a lot of these guys and gals who are running for re-election aren't holding town hall meetings.
Yes, exactly. He's not. And you know, you can tell he's tired of Washington. You can tell. And I know that he has tried to do good in Washington. All of these years, he's tried to show the pork and the extravagant spending on things that are just so ignorant.
Well, you're right. He deserves credit for that, a lot of credit. And he's come up in his staff with a lot of ways to cut the federal government and so forth. And, of course, he's frustrated because he hasn't been successful on any front. He's had enough. He's going home. And my attitude is, okay, we've got to attack this from a different way, and the different way is in the Constitution. Now, the problem is the breakdown of the Constitution. And I just am fed up with the naysayers and the losers who say, who pretend that the Constitution is functioning as it's supposed to, and then they claim those of us who want to breathe life back into it and reestablish it, that we're the ones somehow trying to alter what the framers intended. No, we're trying to institute what the framers intended.
Yes, yes. And that is the American people. I think that is the heart of the American people. And you could tell the frustration tonight. You know, we're all sick and tired of it. You know, I was very upset that the pipeline here in Oklahoma didn't go through. That was the Obama administration that stopped that. Then last week, we have airline mergers that the 11th hour, the night before the agreement, Judicial steps in, Holder steps in and says, no, you can't do that. Well, you know what? It seems that our government unelected agencies that were intended for good for the American people have been used against us. The EPA, the IRS,
you're exactly
NSA.
right.
But I appreciate you, Mark. Thank you.
All right, and you too. Thank you for reporting. How much time do I have, Mr. Producer? Oh, look at this. CNN Crossfire wants you. I'm just reading an email. A request for Mark Levin to appear on CNN's Crossfire. We'll see. Do they even have any ratings, Mr. Producer? I don't even know. Let's go to... But we do appreciate the offer. Let me put it to you that way. We'll see. And we still are waiting to hear from Reince Priebus, the chairman of the Republican National Committee, who has apparently gone in the witness protection program because his communications director on more than one occasion has offered my name as one of those they would consider to moderate a Republican primary debate, and I believe I accepted on the spot, Mr. Producer.
You did.
And you have emailed them, haven't you?
And they conveniently ignored them.
And they won't respond to you. Because it's a ruse, folks, to make you think that they're really interested in you. Do I have time to take a call, or yes or no? Nah, that's not enough time. 45 seconds. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you. We got the word right before I came on the air that the Liberty Amendments, Restoring the American Republic, will, on the September 1st printing of the New York Times bestseller list, be number 1 nonfiction hardback, number 1 nonfiction ebook, number 1 nonfiction hardback combined with nonfiction ebook. This is their categories. That's thanks to you. Let's keep it up. Let's get the information flowing. You hear that senators are reading it. Senator DeMint's reading it. And I salute all you heroes. America, I'll see you tomorrow. I'm Mark Levin.